Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse is one of the strangest films to enter the Oscar race in quite some time. I'm Zach Laws of Gold Derby, and with me now is Craig Lathrop. He is the production designer of that film. And Craig, after all, the movie is called The Lighthouse, so there's a lot of pressure on you to deliver the central element of the story. Talk a little bit about what you thought when you first read the script to this movie, and from a production design standpoint.
Well, when I first read it, whether production design or not, I thought it was a crazy, brilliant script, and was very excited. From a production standpoint, the first things that jumped out at me was the fact that we had a lighthouse and that we were talking about building it. At first, we were looking for one, but quickly we realized that we would have to build it, which is a bit of a challenge. Very small base, very tall structure that looks to tip over. And then the other one was the Fresnel lens. I was concerned about getting Fresnel lens built in the timeline.
Why was building the lighthouse the right way to go? Was it just an issue of not being able to find a correct lighthouse, or just being able to shoot easier? Why was building it the right way to go?
Well, a couple of reasons. First off, yeah, it was that we couldn't find the right thing. We needed a period lighthouse, really on a spit of land, not on an island, because we needed to have access to it. Our budget wouldn't have allowed us to actually shoot on an actual island. It would have been a logistical nightmare. So we needed to find that. We needed to find it with the keeper's house, and it needed to be a bit dilapidated. And if you could find one, there are a few lighthouses, more than a few lighthouses from that period. Most of them are museums, and they're beautifully maintained, and that's not really what we needed. From the shooting point, we would have had to build the interior anyway. Lighthouses are very tight, and we wanted them. The whole thing is a very claustrophobic story, very claustrophobic frame that we use, and all the sets need to be designed with that aspect ratio in mind. So we knew we would have to build the interior anyway. The exterior, like I said, we quickly realized that the combination of elements that we needed, with the lighthouse and the fog signal house and the keeper's house, and the shape that those needed to be in, it just wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to find it. So we set out to build it. I mean, certainly it was thought, there was some people that had suggested that we only build the first sort of 20 feet, which is the way typically you would do this, and you just add the CG. But we have lots of scenes that people were actually in the lighthouse, at the top of the lighthouse, hanging from the lighthouse, whitewashing the lighthouse. It just seemed right to build it. Besides, it's a lot more fun.
One of the interesting aspects of this movie is that, it is designed to look like, sort of an older, almost like a silent movie, from the 20s or so. Can you talk a little bit about how that sort of influenced your work?
I'm not sure how much that influenced. I mean, the photography. I mean, we certainly talked about it. Really, I wanted to transport us not back to the 20s or 30s, but I wanted to do whatever I could to transport the audience back to the 1890s. And I wanted that house to be not just from the 1890s, but really from the early 1800s, so that it could already be old in the 1890s. So we did a lot of research, obviously. Everything you see in the film is built. The aspect ratio, I guess this touches on your question a little bit. The aspect ratio that lends itself to that look of film in the 20s or 30s. It's a very claustrophobic, tight aspect ratio. And we had to design everything with that in mind. Everything from the table that they sit at, so that two people could be, have a scene together in a two-shot, a 50 millimeter lens, and still be inside the building. All of those things had to be quite carefully calibrated. I knew we had a very square frame, and I wanted the spaces to feel small and narrow, so you want to be able to see 3 walls instead of just one. So so everything was small. I mean, everything was calculated on that aspect ratio, everything that we were thinking about. So I guess I did go into that.
Well, and I figure also the fact that it's in black and white must have had an effect on your work as well. And I mean, it's a very specific kind of black and white. I mean, it harkens back to those older films.
Yeah, actually, it's not just the black and white. Jaron Blanchke, our production designer, terribly sorry, Jaron, our director of photography. He had this crazy great idea to use a blue filter. So he actually ended up making a very custom blue filter. And what that does, I mean, a lot of black and white stills photographers will use a red filter when they're taking their stills, because it makes all the red in your face shift towards white so that you have this beautiful complexion. A blue filter does the opposite. So the blue filters makes our characters have leathery faces. Their pores show. Any blemishes are going to show up. And it makes them look weathered, which is fabulous. For me, personally, it was counterintuitive. Regular wooden tones that had some red in them looked like charcoal. And so what I did, it ended up not being that difficult once I got my head around it. But what I did was Jaron helped me with exactly what wavelengths were being cut by his lens, because we didn't actually have it yet. And so I created a custom Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom filter, so that I could just go around and take pictures of everything and run them through and see how what that shift was, because it wasn't just like black and white, where you could see just by looking at something, you sort of know what the values are, and you have a pretty good idea of where it's going. This, you had to be careful of that. You just have to be really careful of that. It turned black.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned doing research. Can you talk a little bit about some of the sources that you used in order to, make it as accurate as possible?
Absolutely. Well, like many period jobs, I think I probably started with the Library of Congress. I also got somebody to actually go into the Library of Congress, because not everything has been digitized, and get me a couple of drawings that I couldn't get otherwise. But a lot of it came from online. And then there's a great group of people that I would love to share. The United States Lighthouse Society. I spoke to them. I joined the society because they were so great. I should do that. And they were a wealth of information. If the people, whoever I was speaking to, didn't know the answer to my questions, they knew somebody else who might. And so you could call them, then call the other person, and they were almost to a person, just very generous with their time and very helpful. Helped me find the collectors out there. There's a lot of collectors for Lighthouse memorabilia, so that people who had actual things from the 1890s, which we rented quite a bit of, from the United States Lighthouse Establishment, which is the government body that took over lighthouses after the Civil War. And they made everything. They stamped, they made china, they made cutlery, they made the tools that they needed, the lighthouse, the light keepers' tools, everything from lens cleaning to dustpans. As a matter of fact, we had a dustpan, not that we needed a period perfect dustpan, but it was one that one of the collectors had, and we actually had a dustpan that was stamped with the U.S. Lighthouse Service insignia.
Well, obviously one of the most fascinating sets in the movie is like the actual lighthouse itself and the interior of that, and all those winding stairs, and when you get to the top of it with that big bulb is. Can you talk a little bit about the design of that? I mean, there's some really, it's interesting from like an expressionistic standpoint, you know, the way that that lighthouse is used. So can you talk about designing that?
Yeah, I mean, sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
Um, the lighthouse, it was certainly based on historical record and the lighthouses that were out there, but there were a few things that we wanted. I wanted a cast iron staircase because they're beautiful and they're transportive. But I didn't want one with the center pole, which a lot of the older lighthouses, it works like a grandfather clock. There's a big weight that falls down the center of these lighthouses. That's what spins the lens. And a lot of them, the weights go down the pole. So I didn't want a pole so that we could see the weights, so that it just helped with the mood and what was going on. And so, you know, we built that as a separate. There's the lighthouse out on Cape Fortune, which was the exterior, and you could go up the center of it, but it was all scaffolding on the inside. And so it had the catwalk on the top and the lantern house, but it didn't have the mechanical room. It didn't have the interior staircase, and we would never, ever have been able to shoot it out there. Those were very tight spaces. So we built the staircase as a separate set, and then we built the mechanical room and the lantern house as a separate set. And all of those sets, the walls would pull out to, you know, allow the camera to gain access. You know, well, there's lots of things that come into it. You know, I wanted grates up at the top so that the light would make that fabulous pattern that you know, Jaron and I discussed. And then there was the Fresnel lens, which is a whole story in itself.
Well, tell us about that Fresnel lens.
Sure. The interesting thing about the Fresnel lens, for me personally, it's a beautiful. Fresnel lenses are beautiful. And we knew we needed a second or third order Fresnel lens. We needed to build a third order lens. But quickly during my research, I realized that we weren't going to get one. We were going to have to build. And this is shortly after Rob had sent me the script. I quickly got on the phone. I started calling around, started figuring out where they were in the world. There was one in Australia, but shipping it over was not going to happen. And they also weigh well over a ton because of all the glass. So I designed one before we'd even been greenlit. I modeled it up in Rhino 3D, as a 3D program. And I found a guy to build it, who was Dan Spinella, who was great and did a fantastic job. But Dan didn't have enough time to build it in the amount of time that we had. So I ended up going to New York. I flew to New York for a meeting, an early meeting, and a read-through of the script with Jaron and Rob and the producers from A24 and New Regency and RT Pictures. And I told them what my dilemma was, that we had a very expensive set piece. I showed them what it was, but that we wouldn't have enough time once the film was greenlit to actually make it. And as I've said before, nobody asked me to leave the room, which I was really pleased with. And so in about a week, but they approved an initial amount of money to get the thing started before we even knew if we had a meeting.
So before I let you go, let me ask you about working with Robert Eggers. You worked with him before on The Witch. Interesting about Robert is that, you know, he has a background as a production designer as well. So what's it like working with somebody who essentially, you know, speaks your same language because of his own experiences?
It's fantastic. You hit the nail on the head. He speaks your language. He likes to do a ton of research. I like to do a ton of research. It's great to have a collaborator who will go down those rabbit holes with all this weird esoteric bullshit, you know, from different periods. And so it's fun. It's fantastic. You know, you do a drawing and you hand it to him and he can read it and he knows what it is, which is not always the case. So what can I say? It's fantastic from the point of view that he's a production designer, and so he speaks your language and it's easy. It's also fantastic because he's a brilliant, kind, wonderful person to work with. So all those things together, it's fantastic. So I don't encourage anybody else to work with him though, because
you want to do it, yeah. Well, Craig, this is certainly one of the most interesting movies that we've seen all year, and certainly part of that has to do with the way the set was designed. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your work. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you. And thanks to all you at home for watching. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button below, and make sure you visit us at goldderby.com for all the latest Oscar news.